So we're going to go on and talk about critical points today. And a critical point are points where the graph changes its direction or shape. Direction or shape. So if I look here, I'm going up, and now I'm going down. That's direction. I'm going down, and now I'm going up. That's direction. Here, it looks like it's going to be a parabola, but it flips and it goes this way. It's still going down the whole way, but it changed shape. Okay? So, extrema are points where the graph changes direction. The function is going to have a minimum or a maximum value, and it's relative or absolute. A point of inflection is where the graph changes its shape, but not its direction. It changes its shape, but not its direction. A relative maximum is a point where the greatest value compared to the points around it. An absolute maximum is the point with the greatest value over the whole graph. A relative minimum is the least value compared to other points around it. And an absolute minimum is the lowest point, the smallest point, least point over the entire graph. So, if I look at this point and this point, they're both maximums, but what's the biggest maximum? This one, so it's the absolute. This is still a maximum, but we just call it relative. This one and this one are both minimums, but this one's lower than this one, so this is the absolute minimum over the whole graph. Does that make sense? All right, you guys are either bored, tired, nobody even shook your head yes. Pretend like you're playing along with me. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So the graph here. This point, is this a minimum or a maximum? Minimum, right? It's at the bottom. Is it a relative minimum or an absolute minimum? It's an absolute minimum. And it's an absolute minimum at 4 and negative 5. So put points where you think they're maximums. Put a point on your graph where you think it's a maximum. What's this one called? Absolute maximum, and the other one is Mrs. Archer. Barbara Monroy. Nope. Oh, wait. Yes. Sorry. Okay, thanks. You can go get your ID. I'm not making the rules here. Okay. You have one hanging around your neck. No. Probably, I don't know. Okay, so we said this was the absolute max, relative max. And we're just going to estimate the absolute max is at negative 1.5 and 3. And the relative max is a positive 1.5 and negative 2.5. Okay, what about this point? Absolute minimum? What are these? What does that mean? It goes to negative infinity. So is that an absolute minimum? It's a relative minimum. Okay, you guys try 3 and 4. So we have a relative max and a relative min. And why are they relative and not absolute? Because it keeps on going, right? We have this, so that gets bigger, and this, and it gets smaller, correct? So the relative min, I said is -3, -5-ish. So what's this one? Again, a relative max and a relative min because of this. So the relative max what's this point? So this is the point of inflection, right? It changes shape, but it keeps decreasing. Changes shape, but it keeps decreasing. So it's a point of inflection there. And I said that was at 0, 3. Okay, so now we're kind of like dipping our toe into, this is, if you haven't been in pre-AP, you haven't seen this before. And if you had a better math teacher, they would tell you all the technical explanations for this. I think sometimes it's better just to keep it simple, right? So we're going to talk about increasing and decreasing. So if you take your finger and you put it on the graph, and your finger is going up, starting left to right. If it's going up, that is increasing. If you put your finger on here and it's going down, that is decreasing. If you put your finger on it and it stays even, that is constant. And we define with our x's. Always the x. So my increasing on the interval, I'm increasing on this interval, so it's negative infinity, and it stops at 1. And I'm going to make it a parenthesis, and I'm going to come back and tell you why. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 4, and then it's decreasing 4 to infinity. Remember, you define with the x's. So it increases to right here, and that's 1. It stays constant to here, and that's 4. And then it decreases to infinity, from 4 to infinity. Yeah, I am. Right here. It's right there. Can't you see that? Thank you. So, the reason they're parentheses, this point right here, when I put the parenthesis, is that increasing or it's constant? Why is it not increasing? because it stops right there, right? So that's the reason we put the parenthesis, because it's really increasing and constant, and you can't put them in both. So we don't put it in either one, all right? So the same thing here. Is this constant or decreasing? You can't pick, you can't pick, right? So they're really both, so we just won't include them. That's why we use the parentheses. Okay? All right. So if I look here, if I start at negative infinity and I go to here, I'm decreasing to 3, and then 3 to infinity is increasing. Okay, and number 6, find me an increasing interval. Where's an increasing interval? Does anyone find one? This one? Right here? If I put my finger on it, it's going down. That's got to be decreasing. And what's happening here? So there is no increasing. Do not be afraid to answer. I can't find one. Okay. So which function is this on number 5? This is absolute value. And this is a rational function. And so I have 2 decreasing intervals. I'm going to do negative infinity. And I'm going to hit the asymptote here at negative 5. And then negative 5 to positive infinity. On the next one is an exponential growth. Is there any decreasing interval? No. So there's no decreasing interval. So negative infinity to infinity. So are these relative mins and maxes or absolute mins and maxes? These are relatives because of the infinity. So this is decreasing negative infinity to 0. Remember, we define by x's. And then from 0, what is that, 2.5? Is it 3? We'll just call it 3. And then 3 to infinity. All right, this point right here, what is this? Relative minimum or absolute minimum? Absolute. What's this one? Relative. And the middle one? Relative max. Very good. So the first interval is going to be decreasing. And then it increases from 2 to 0. It decreases again. And I know they're not exact, y'all. I know. So the first one, negative infinity to negative 1, is increasing. What do I know about this point right here in the middle? It's a point of what? That's a point of inflection. At a point of inflection, do I change direction? No. So if I start here and I'm going down, I'm still going down. So I'm going down this whole interval here from negative 1 to 1, and then we go 1 to infinity.